Right then, friends. Although we may be small in number, the broadcast goes out to a much wider community. So there you go. Small but perfectly formed. Right. Good morning, people. And today we have a different speech from a friend from Central who some of us know very well. This is David Mowat, and his title for the talk is Playing the Notes You Can't Hear, Quakerism and Jazz. David.
Good morning, friends. I'm going to approach my delivery in the manner of the subject itself. I am improvising. And what I'd like to do is to describe, tell you the story of what it's like to get on stage and start to improvise. And as I'm speaking, I'd like you to think about Quaker worship and consider the parallels or the differences, and then we will talk about it. So I haven't got a prepared speech that'll last half an hour, maybe shorter. I don't know yet. Let's see what emerges. Hopefully both jazz improvisation and Quaker worship will be enriched as a result of the discussion, because it can work the other way around as well. I could start by talking about Quaker worship to a bunch of jazz musicians. Now that would be quite interesting. I know there's one practicing musician here, Kathryn. Who else? Just let me check in. Who else has a practice? I don't mean professional. I mean someone who plays an instrument or sings and for whom music making is part of their lives. Anyone else here?
I used to sing in choir,
Uh-huh.
which was a little while ago, but that was absolutely wonderful.
Oh, sorry, didn't mean to. Yeah, I've recently acquired what do you call those things like a piano, but you can carry it around? Keyboard.
Keyboard.
Sorry, I just lost the word for a minute. I used to play the piano when I was growing up. I didn't like it. I hated it. But since then, I've heard all the different noises people can do with a keyboard, and I thought that looks quite fun. And a friend was getting rid of a second-hand one, so it came here, and it's still here. I haven't started on it yet, but it's here. So I feel like I'm sort of getting ready.
Can I just ask you, Patsy, what was it you hated about the piano when you were growing up?
Oh, it was quite the way it was taught. Looking back, I would say it was the way it was taught. It was very formal. Um, it wasn't that I had a problem learning the notes and so on. I didn't, but I found it intensely boring. I enjoyed playing the piano, but I liked doing it on my own, and there was no one there. And then I learned a few things I could play sort of automatically on my own, and I quite like doing that as well. But really, I never progressed as I was supposed to do into. We used in those days we had something called Eisteddfods, which children were dragooned into performing on platforms, and I had to do that, and it was terrible. So in the end, I gave the whole thing up gratefully for 50 years.
Thank you.
Sadly.
Um, Anyone else? Rosie, Angela, David?
No, never.
No, never. Okay. But I guess you listen to music. You appreciate. Do you listen to new music or do you listen to the things that you know you like?
Oh, the things I know I like, really. And the things that friends ask me to listen to because they like them.
Mm. What about Rosie and Angela? You shook your heads when it came to practicing. What about you?
Well,
Things you like?
I well, I was born in April 1939, so 6 months before the war started. And when the war was over, we lived in Bromley Green Road, and my cousins John and David, their dad had been a naval officer. I was not allowed to talk to him, and I didn't know why. But when I'd finished my homework when I was about 16, I used to cycle down from Shaddocks to Bromley Green Road. I would go into 45A, which was where my cousins lived. I would climb in the window. How I didn't get murdered, I don't know. And my grandfather and Mr. Hazel, John and David's dad, we had to call him Mr. Hazel. Mr. Hazel had lots of records, and I used to, after I'd done my homework, I would be this was from Shaddocks to Bromley Green Road. I would open the window of where John and David had slept, and I would play records with a wind-up gramophone. Wow. Now, that is off the wall and bizarre, and it's mainly, I think, because I was born before the war, Yeah. I grew up saying, Mum, can I go out to play? And my mum would say, no, you can't, there's a war on. Well, I didn't know what a war was. I was 4 years old and there were barrage balloons overhead. And I somehow thought a war was, I had to keep my shoes to make sure that I didn't step in cat's poo because Mum didn't want poo in the house. So I somehow, I'm trying to explain how this very inquisitive 6-year-old child made sense of there was a war on. So sorry it's long-winded, but that's my reply.
Thank you, Angela.
Yeah, I think I grew up with Top of the Pops and Radio Luxembourg. But parallel to that was the kind of Irish music scene. When we had big family gatherings and wakes and funerals and that, there'd be a lot of singing of ballads. And I've kind of developed an interest in country music, if you like, or good old Nashville and all of that. I think partly the ballady versions where there's a story, usually a love story. But then I think my music interests are reasonably eclectic. I mean, I like classical music as well, listening to it. And it's amazing. There's music for every occasion, every mood, and so on. So, yeah, that's one of the joys of Alexa. If I remember, something comes into my head and I think, Alexa, play such and such a song that I mightn't have heard for a long time, or I can only remember the chorus of. Yeah, so it's always been there in the background and in different guises.
Thanks. Kathryn, and David, do you want to just say a few preliminary things along the lines that you've heard?
I don't know where to start. Is this just about our relationship with music? Is that
your personal one? Yeah.
Yeah. So I am from a musical family. Everyone in my household plays an instrument. I started playing the piano when I was 5, but in more of a formal way, playing like classical music and stuff like that. Didn't really know what I was playing. It was just like reading sheet music and like playing that note, then that note. And I like, so I didn't really have any understanding of music, but I could play something that sounded like I did. That's what it felt like to me anyway. And then I played the cello a bit when I was really young, but stopped it because I didn't want to take it on the bus. I stopped having piano lessons at some point, played blues for a little bit, where I learned a little bit more about like chords and stuff. Picked up the guitar to learn songs when I was like around 18. I started like getting more into that and singing. I found my voice. That was like a really kind of interesting experience of like finding like confidence and being able to sing authentically, I suppose. That was kind of a journey. And it's like thinking on the, like what I do now is more like experimental improv on the cello, which I ended up picking up again when I was like 21, because I started hallucinating the cello in music when it wasn't there. I was like, I need to play that instrument again. But experimental music, funnily enough, I played when I was younger, just messing around in contrast to this like classical thing. And I didn't know that it was music. Like I was playing it and I played it for my mum and she was like, well, it sounds really good, but it's not really music, is it? And I was like, oh, I guess it's not. And then it wasn't until I was an adult that I heard like someone play kind of like experimental music and I was like, oh my gosh, I knew it was music. And then so I've been kind of exploring that more and more, and finding that kind of freedom, like channeling some sort of whatever improvised thing that comes at the time, which does feel to me like, I'm assuming it does to you too, David, of it feeling somewhat spiritual, I would say. I don't know.
Okay, thank you, Kathryn. David, do you want to just?
Well, how lovely to have the confidence and the courage to explore, and it's just a lovely story, Kathryn. I grew up. My dad had a big collection of classical records. Nobody in the family played music. I'm trying to think where the nearest piano was. Church, probably. So I grew up with classical music from my dad and going down to the beach and listening to Radio Luxembourg with my friends, and hearing what was coming there, and that evolving into this whole quite revolutionary music scene with the Beatles and all of these other great bands. And nowadays I go into cafes in Bristol and the sort of mood music is often as not just great classic music from the 60s and 70s, which I totally love. I went and lived in California at the end of the 70s and acquired a guitar. It was a very beautiful Guild guitar, wood, acoustic, which had been damaged, and I had it repaired, and I started playing it, and I found a kind of it was hard work. I didn't generate instant rewards, but I could sense a shift in my awareness when I would play. And unfortunately, there was a collapse in the computer industry when Microsoft Office came out, and I left Silicon Valley and let go of the guitar. I gave it to a friend who had a need and a better use, more skill, and I've not taken it up since. And I feel there's a lack. And the other day I heard an interchange where it was maybe in a film or something, and somebody was asking, when you see the music, can you hear the orchestra? And the guy said, yes. And I thought, wow, there's a whole dimension in my life that's just not there. I can't look at a piece of sheet music and hear it playing. And there are people who have a whole part of their life fully developed that is hardly even vestigial in mine. So, yeah. Apart from appreciation and enjoyment, but not performance and understanding.
Well, thank you everyone for kicking things off in the way that you have. Music as something that begins through rebellion against what is imposed on you. 50 years later, a keyboard is picked up and there's curiosity beginning. The revolution of hearing, Luxembourg radio, the rebellion of climbing through a window and playing on your own a collection of records. So along with the rebelliousness and the freedom, I suppose is another word for it, inherent in music, be it listening or playing. I was going to say something, along with that comes association. For all of you, there's an association with memory and a kind of a sudden wide collection of memories. So that's, I think, interesting of itself. This is not a pre-arranged insight. I'm just reflecting back what you're bringing to the table. So I'm going to describe what happens to me. I'll give you a little bit of background to myself. So I also come from a musical family. Everyone played something. I played trumpet from the age of 10. There was always a piano in the house, and we were allowed to make sound with it. The only rule was don't bang it. Otherwise, we could do whatever we wanted with it. And if it was disturbing to other people, they would leave the drawing room and we would carry on. It was that kind of household. And my brother became a jazz keyboard player. And as a teenager, I started into jazz as well as classical. And it was an important part of my life. And then when I was about 30, I joined the Musicians Union, and it became part of my professional life, earning money at gigs. And it's been the same ever since. And now it's the major part of my identity. As a trumpet player and as a composer using a piano. Not the only part, but a really significant part of who I am. So improvisation. So at the core of my music making is this thing called improvisation. And I'm going to describe sort of what happens on stage. So I will have prepared my instrument in its trumpet stand. There might be some sheet music, or there might not be. And there might be a microphone, or there might not be. I'm almost always with other musicians. Occasionally, I play on my own. That's quite rare. And the first thing that happens is silence. I may close my eyes, or I may look around the room and make eye contact with my fellow musicians. And before any sound is made, we will be, even if for a few seconds, we will be quiet. And we will be tuning in to what's about to happen. There's a sort of a moment when we all hold our breath. And then a sound emerges, and I'll take in the sound. Typically, I'm a responder rather than an initiator. So I'll hear a sound. It might be the opening bars of a piano. It might be a formal introduction, usually semi-improvised. That is to say, the piano player will have a set of chords in front of them, which are codes for harmonic clusters, and will express that harmony in an improvised way, maybe playing the clusters together, maybe syncopating them, but my ear will receive the quality and the sound of that chord, and that'll create a certain kind of reverberation, a certain mood, a certain memory for me, So my mind will start to work and I'll start to think, oh yes, that's a C minor ninth. And I know how that goes and I know how that sounds. And I might relax and not think about it anymore because I know intuitively, instinctively, having studied C minor ninth to an endless degree and played it in all kinds of permutations, I can trust. So my mind will hear, identify, and then relax because I'm trusting that what emerges, emerges, and it'll be fine. I might hear a cluster of harmonies, and I think I can't quite pitch that in my mind. I think it's an E flat sus sharp ninth, but I'm not sure what it is really. And then I can react in different ways. I can react by feeling my hesitancy, feeling my fear, and wait for more information before I start to think about committing a sound, a note. Or I can think to myself, well, again, although I don't quite identify what's going on there, I will take a risk. So there's two essential things going on there. One is trust to my intuition and my musical self. I have the knowledge that I can fly, and I just have to trust that the wings will come out at the right time. But the other one is risk. I can say to myself, I actually don't know what's going to emerge, but I'm going to try it out. And the sound I make will be, it might sit within that cluster, it might sit within that harmony, or it might not sit within that harmony. It might be either concordant or discordant. But either way, the first step is a step on a journey. And the journey might be a phrase, a snippet, or it might be one note, and then a pause. Typically, with my approach, I'll start slowly, I'll test the waters, and I won't commit boldly until I have more information about where the pianist is taking their story. By this stage, the bass player may have joined in, and they are adding the root, the bass, the ground, if you like, to the harmonic interplay of the pianist. And the color of a harmonic pattern or a cluster of notes together changes according to the note that's played underneath it, insofar as the bass player is playing the bass note. And that will change the information about that chord to me. And it'll send me on perhaps a different direction. And perhaps by then the drummer will have started. Perhaps the drum is starting with color. By color, I mean something that's not yet a rhythm, but it could be a tap on the edge of a cymbal, a sort of shimmering, or it could be a tom-tom with a soft mallet, or a harsher strike from a stick, and the snare might be on. And at some point, rhythm may emerge from the drummer. And that'll give me a whole other world of information apart from the harmony. I've got rhythm, so I have a choice of what to play, what sounds to play, and I have a choice of where to place the note in relation to the rhythm. And just as harmonically, I can play something that's concordant, that's with the inside the grouping and sitting easily on our ears and the ear of the listener. Really, there's no fundamental difference between the listener in the audience and us lot. We're all listening together. It's only that convention dictates that the musician on the stage is the one who makes the sound. You can easily change the format and get the audience to join in. Audiences typically are more reticent and less confident as expressing, but there's nothing intrinsically different between the musician on stage and the listener. Everyone adds a considerable amount to what's happening. So I was talking about rhythm. And I explained that just as a note that I play on my trumpet can be inside the harmony of that is being expressed on stage through the piano. Let's just assume we've got a pianist, a bass player, a drummer, and a trumpet player. So the same is true rhythm. I can sit comfortably within the rhythm. Can you imagine two people walking side by side on a road? And imagine they've got their hands, I've got my hand around the waist of the other, and vice versa. To walk well together, we need to be in step. Otherwise, it can be a bit jerky, can't it, when you're sort of walking along? So the same is true of a percussive instrument like a trumpets can be lyrical and played with a long breath, 30-second, 1-minute phrase sometimes, without taking a breath. But more often than not, I'm making a percussive sound. I'm pushing the air out, making a percussive sound. So I'm as much a percussion instrument as I am anything else. And where I place my own beat, if you like, where I strike my note in relation to the drum, can be easily together with the drum or in contrast to it. All the time as musicians, what we're doing is we're playing with tension and release. We're playing with what is discomforting, uncomfortable, and what is comfortable. If you play comfortable all the time, particularly people who are drawn to jazz, it becomes boring. It becomes going through the routine. It becomes mere entertainment. It's harder to get intensely authentic and locked into the music if we always play what we know. At the other extreme, if we always play what we don't know, if we're always playing in contrast harmonically or rhythmically to what we're hearing, we can lead to a place where neither the emotional nor the thinking mind can relate to what's happening. It becomes a confusion. It becomes a chaos. It becomes a noise. It's not music, dear, as someone said. And somewhere in the middle between those two extremes is the space which we need to inhabit that has interest. The space where someone has been alerted to the beginning of a story and they want to carry on that story, but they're not quite sure where to go or where the musicians are taking them. But they can get a sense that there's a story being told. There's a direction of travel. And some of it is uneasy. There's a jarring, but then there might be a release. There might be a point of relief. So discomfort and comfort. The same in rhythm. You might literally be out of step and confusing, or you might be adding excitement by syncopating something, by doing the counter rhythm. All rhythm carries a shadow. In fact, by definition, all music carries a shadow of what is not there, what is not being played. All rhythm carries a shadow of what is not there. And counter melody, counterpoint, counter rhythm, offbeats in jazz parlance. We play with these to create excitement. So what is improvisation? It's playing with these elements I'm talking about, playing with them consciously, but not in the way that your mind is thinking, right, I can hear this E flat being played. If I play my F over the E flat, I know that's a ninth or a second, and that'll work with this chord. And then I'm going to switch to a B flat, and the mind, the improvising mind, doesn't work like that. At least mine doesn't. I don't know, but because I've outside the improvising framework, I have been practicing. I have literally played my scales over and over and over again, starting on the first or second or third, all the notes of the scale, upwards, downwards, in patterns like the playing of church bells, in different sequences. I've done that with scales, I've done that with rhythm, I've done that with physical exercises to make sure that when I go tut, 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 tut with my tongue, it delivers a note. I play on the high register, the low register. All this are the mechanics and of what you do before you play music. It's a skill, and it takes practice, and it's often boring. It's often tedious, but it can be interesting. I try and have every element of my practice session, maybe 10 or 20% at the end of it, after I've been through the routines, which I do every time. I'm reminded of what Buddhists call beginner's mind. I go back to the same practices, same kind of practice that I've done for 57 years. I'm 67 and I started when I was 10. I go back to the same ones and I try and find something fresh in it each time. That's a whole sort of, if you like, a spiritual dimension, but a very, very basic dimension to all playing. And this is completely separate. The 70% of the rehearsal time, practice time, is separate from the music making that I was describing earlier. And as I said, I don't think when I'm practicing, I'm trying to be conscious of everything, my posture, where my lips are, the sound I make, the knowledge I'm bringing to bear. Currently, I'm playing around with the pentatonic sequence. That is the 5-note scales in the cycles of fifth. I'm just going around them in different ways and finding different patterns to play with. So in my practice, I'm conscious of that, and I'm saying to myself, all right, this first valve, F, second, third valve, E flat, this fits there. I'm thinking it through and I'm trying to keep aware all the time. But when I'm on stage, when I'm improvising, I let go of all that. And it comes back to what I was saying about trusting. If I've done the woodshedding, if I've done my homework, I don't need to consider all that. I might not have memorized a chord sequence. Typically, I won't have memorized a chord sequence. And some jazz tunes are complex and don't follow a familiar path. So I might have to look at my chord charts on the sheet in front of me for a bit of a guide. So there's a little bit of my brain, the left brain, which has knowledge, is giving me a bit of a guide. But mostly, and ideally, I kind of close my eyes and I'm all ears and I'm all instinct and I'm all trust. And in that situation, I perform at my best. I improvise at my best. I don't know what's going to emerge. I'm in the moment. I'm just responding to what I'm hearing. I can be, I mean, the the other thing, it's just occurring to me, the other huge thing about all this is having the confidence to not play, having the confidence to just sit there or stand there and listen and enjoy what other people are doing. Maybe the bass player is getting off on a brilliant solo, and I'm having to make a judgment. I'd like to join in, but is it right? Am I interfering with what they're saying, or can I add something here? And if I'm truly relaxed and confident, I may spend a long period not playing at all. This is a feature of my playing, particularly in over and against many other horn players who are more alpha male types. They are strong, and others follow their lead. I'm not an alpha male. I like the rhythm section to really establish something, and I will contribute as a fourth member of the band. Occasionally, I'll get flamboyant and chirpy and forceful, assertive. It's not really my style. I like to have a lot of space in my playing, and in that space to come up with a phrase and then stop again. Kind of like bird song. I'm very inspired by walking, and I'm always listening to bird calls. On the whole, they don't go on forever. Not most birds are not like larks who once they're off the ground, they're just at it all the time. They sing in clusters, and I like to play in clusters. And I think that's the human ear, which is after all an animal ear. We are part of the animal world. We like to receive our messages in clusters. And dialogue, isn't it? Conversation is like that. Having a monologue like I'm giving right now is relatively unusual. Thank goodness. So I've talked about tension and release, about what's discomforting and what's comfortable, and inhabiting that space as an improvising musician in between. We need an edge. We need to be on the edge. You can't surf a wave until it's breaking. Otherwise, you're just sort of bobbing up and down in the ocean, waiting. But you need to be on the exciting edge, and you can choose to engage and surf, or you can bide your time and wait for the next. I'm kind of pushing the metaphor a bit here. So tension and release and excitement and telling a story, going in a direction, harmonically, rhythmically, melodically, because what comes out of the trumpet is the snippet of a melody. If you think of all the compositions you like, at a certain point, at the beginning of that composition, da 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 dum, da 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 dum, which very familiar sound, that would have been a fresh improvised cluster for Beethoven when it first came into his head. Or all composition is based on improvisation. Improvisation is, if you like, spontaneous composition. So there's nothing special about what I'm saying. Classical music used to have a lot more. Classical music, as we know it and understand it, and as it's taught, used to have a lot more improvisation than it does now. So the other element I started to talk about was confidence. Confidence means not being led by your ego or your anxiety, thinking, God, people have come here to listen to me. I better play something. I've been practicing this piece and these scales, and I love this particular pattern. I've been practicing it really hard, and I'm going to deliver what I've practiced. No, that's not it. Famously, Miles Davis heard, I think it was George Henderson, one of the greatest tenor players of his day, in a hotel room, and Henderson was doing all these licks, doing this incredible thing. Very, very pleased to be playing with Miles Davis, legendary and fearsome band leader. And at the gig, the night of the gig, George Henderson played this amazing solo. And after the gig, he was very pleased with himself, and he got rapturous applause. And at the end of it, Miles Davis said to him, "You're fired." He had this kind of deep, husky voice. "You're fired." And so, what have I done? I played well, people liked it. He said, "You played the same notes as you played in the hotel room." So this is the thing. This is like why I gave it that title, because playing the notes you can't hear is critical. It's critical. When all is said and done, as an improviser, you go up there and you've got to have a blank mind. You've got to have no mind. You've got to have nothing in the way of your ears, your ears and that moment of committing. No thought process. Of course, I do have thought processes, and I do think, all right, this kind of note will fit. But as much as possible, I need a blank mind, because only the blank mind can receive. Only the blank mind can receive the inspiration. And this is like in the realms of spirit now. Only the blank mind can receive the inspiration to play. I'm not talking of messages from God and stuff. It's a normal, natural process. Really, it's a normal, natural process. Spirituality is a normal, natural thing. We just have this highfalutin language around it and concepts around it. It's really normal. As we know as Quakers, when we're sitting down for worship, this is the thing. I think that when I'm approaching improvising as a musician, as I've described, it's very similar. Perhaps it's exactly the same as sitting down in worship. So I'm going to stop there. None of this is premeditated. I've talked off the cuff, and I'll just see how you respond, or riff off what I've given out.
Oh, there's loads I could say to that. I've really enjoyed hearing you talk about your process. And the thing that I find really interesting, and relating it to worship as well, right? This kind of getting into a blank mind state and recognizing that the thinking mind is always there a little bit, right? It kind of comes along for the ride, but trying to surrender as much as possible to this blank mind state is it's quite tricky, actually, I think, isn't it? It does take a lot of practice to be able to surrender. And it's kind of interesting what you're saying about confidence and the ego and stuff, because the thing, as relatively new to improvising in public, how different it is to be able to be at home and be blank mind stated and doing all this amazing crazy stuff, and it feeling really wonderful and free, and then suddenly there's people looking at you and you're like, oh, maybe I should just do a thing I know. Or it's so hard to kind of suspend that channel to the open receptive state. And I think as in Quaker meetings, I very rarely get up and say anything, but have done, maybe in 2 years I've done that 2 or 3 times or something. So really kind of testing myself to be with the silence initially, actually, like you're saying in the music, with waiting and seeing what the landscape is, and kind of letting it come. I've sort of challenged myself to feel comfortable with the silence, to know what it is, to have something to bring to it ultimately. And I think it's quite hard in a Quaker meeting to differentiate between oh, is this something that has come to my blank mind receptive state, or am I thinking this? Like, am I constructing it? And obviously it feels like they're both involved a little bit, because you can never completely get rid of your thinking mind. And just like sitting with that discomfort a bit of like, is this something to share? Like, is this something to bring? I find is like really a challenge actually in the meeting. And I mean, it's a challenge in music too, but you sort of, because you can practice it in a different way. I mean, I kind of practice that in Quaker, like in life, I suppose, with sharing things to talk about now, like with people, of like what is coming and what is being forced, you know, like what is rehearsed and what is just spontaneous. And I try and lean into that. But yeah, I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts about that kind of like the tension between those two minds. And yeah, that's just my ramblings.
Thanks, Kathryn.
Being part of music is a great part for me, and one of my great joys was being part of the Beethoven Ninth, and the power of singing with others in community with others, and forming this whole piece. I can't imagine anybody suddenly kind of in the middle of the Derisiere suddenly kind of rifting off to do something by themselves. They probably get quickly ejected. So, but there is a two, you know, and I understand the joy of free form, but maybe it's not me. You know, maybe I like too much the joining together, being together in a soundscape which has been produced by, say, Mozart or Beethoven or even Shostakovich, or and the modern people. There's people who have in the past, you know, created these other sound systems, like the modernists, you know, Schoenberg and people like this, you know. But you know, it's as if it's two different worlds nearly. The one which is kind of the formalized, and you go along with this, and the jazz, which is much more free form and the understanding of self as well.
But Ray, free form approaches to making music and free form worship on a Sunday morning, are they similar to you?
I think, you know, that is, yeah. You and again, as Kathryn says, you have to know which is which is the nearly the ego of you speaking, or whether it is that other. And is that what is that other? Is that a free form of spiritual worship?
Okay, other people, what is that other?
I can feel a resonance here, and it does relate to worship. I practice a meditation, and I value in this time particularly, I value the ability to not be buffeted around by what's going on in the world. There's so much that one can feel, to the point sometimes where it's hard to feel, and you sort of I sort of switch off and don't want to hear. But to be able to dive inside and find silence, that to me is the discipline. The other bit of discipline, which you mentioned, knowing your music, I know a particular topic field quite well, energy and community energy and solar and things like that, and I can be unsure where I'm going to go, what I'm going to do with that. And when I've found myself in a silent state, I may have the thought, I've really no idea what I'm going to do today. I've no idea what I can usefully do. And I will just rest until I become aware of an impulse coming out of the silence that I want to follow. And that can be that can be what sets the scene for the day. And it wouldn't work if I hadn't had the silence and I hadn't actually got a certain fluidity with the technologies and the community and so on that I'm interested in working with. So it is there is a kind of playing jazz, looking to find a tune or some music that I can play at this time in this space with what's going on around me, and or just arising from my own impulse. That's just as valuable.
Great, thank you.
So, sorry, that's my.
Okay, Rosie, Angela, Patsy, we've not heard from you.
Well, I certainly think of when I arrive, I'd sit in the meeting house and meeting of worship begins. I usually have so many things in my head, and I have to work really hard at trying to place those thoughts somewhere else. And to do that, sometimes I'll go round and in my head I'm saying, I name each person who's there and say, I hold you in the light, Mary, I hold you in the light, so and so and so and so and so. And then hopefully by the time I've done that, I'm a bit more present, in that moment, and wait and see what happens. Because of my upbringing as a Roman Catholic and going to Mass, where the rituals were all there and the music and the words, to then do something completely different, like just come into the silence and wait and see what happens. I have to really resist the temptation not to come prepared in a way, because I think, yes, we come with hearts and minds prepared, but prepared in this case doesn't mean with a script or knowing what you're going to say. And so, to be quiet is actually quite the discipline, and to resist the temptation to fill the quiet, and know whether that's a spirit or the light or whatever working in you. But I do like the idea that if you do stand up and speak, and I suppose it's a bit like improv, sometimes the message doesn't make sense to you, but it might speak to somebody else. It might be for somebody else. And I imagine jazz improv is a bit like that. It will speak to somebody in the audience and resonate with them.
Yes, typically after a gig, I'll think, oh God, that was a rubbish solo on that thing. Or I just couldn't get my notes out, or my tone was terrible or something. And then someone else will come after me and say, "Oh, thank you, that really touched me." And I'm kind of going, "What?" But I have to accept that was their experience and be sort of a bit humble about it. I mean, at its best, I'm a channel for something. You know.
I just want to say I love that sentence you just said, Rosie, about being prepared doesn't mean coming with a script. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Patsy and Angela, we got only a few minutes left.
Well, I mean, thank you, David. I lived and worked in New York for 3 years, and we came back when I was pregnant with my daughter, who was 60 last year. On a Sunday afternoon, we used to go to a jazz cafe in Greenwich Village, and quite often Miles Davis would appear, very much the worse for wear, and he'd play. And there was also a woman called Blossom Deirdre,
Wow.
and she had the most wonderful voice. When I came back from New York, I was already very aware that I wasn't a Christian, I was a humanist. So that's my insight. I don't think it was jazz that got me that. I think it was the whole atmosphere of New York. It was an amazing place to live. I was there when President Kennedy was assassinated, but that was not, So my insights into my thinking as a result, in a way of living in New York, listening to jazz, was that actually, no, I'm not a Christian, I'm a humanist. So that's my insight.
Thank you. Wow.
Yeah.
Blossom Dairy, wonderful singer.
Yeah.
Wonderful singer.
Patsy?
What can I say really, except I'm still getting there, folks. It takes, I sit down, in meeting, and it takes me a good 20 minutes to clear my mind of rubbish, everyday stuff, worries about people, worries about my life, worries about the world. It takes me a long time. And then I do what I experience then is enormously soothing. And if I can just put up with it being soothing, because I don't really like being soothed very much, if I can just put up with that for a bit, I usually do reach some form of insight about where my life's going and what I ought to be doing. But not always. Sometimes I'm still sitting there groping around and it's time to shake hands. So, but thank you. I found the talk really interesting. I'm going to be thinking about it quite a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the opportunity. And thanks for asking me. I think it was you, Patsy, who asked me. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, friends. Any more questions or comments for David? No? Right then. Now, Patsy, I think I heard from you that you're not doing the talk next week, are you?
Well, yes, I swapped with Hattie.
With
So,
Patsy.
so next week, Harriet Harman is going to be talking to Ray and me about.
Harriet Lupton.
Sorry.
Harriet Lupton.
up
Oh,
to
Lord Harriet Harman.
Did I say that?
Harriet Harman is a politician.
I have been getting her.
Allegiance is coming out.
Harriet Harman was really my favourite politician for years, you know. And so to me, I'm not surprised. I apologise, but I'm really not surprised because to me, the name Harriet naturally has the word Harman. Oh dear, right. Ray, we turn to you, I think.
Harriet Dupin, she's going to be talking about why she's a Quaker. And Patsy and I will try to ask her some questions on that. So, and any of you who know Harriet will know that she is a interesting friend, has done lots of differing things, you know, and so her take on Quakerisms should be interesting. So come along and be interested. Okay, friends.
Thanks very much, David. Thank you.
That's the two runners would say, and it's good night from here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.